The rain was falling softly on the small, cracked window of a one-room apartment in the heart of the city. Inside, Aisha sat on the edge of a wooden bed, her hands gently resting on her round belly. The world outside felt loud, impatient, and unforgiving, but inside that room, there was only silence. The kind of silence that comes when life changes so suddenly that you can't decide whether to cry or to fight. She was 7 months pregnant, alone, and unsure how she would survive the next day. Her husband had left 2 months ago, walking out with nothing but a bag and words that still burned in her heart. "I can't do this anymore," he had said, his voice cold and final. Since then, Aisha had been surviving on whatever work she could find, stitching clothes for neighbors, washing dishes for families who hardly noticed her presence. Every night, she would talk to her unborn child, promising a better life, even though she didn't know how she would make it happen. One evening, after finishing a long day of work, she returned home to find the electricity cut off. The landlord wanted the rent, and she had barely enough for food. Sitting in the dark, she placed her hands over her stomach and whispered, "I will not let you see me give up." Something inside her shifted that night, a quiet determination that began to burn brighter than her fear. The next morning, she went to a local tailoring shop, asking the owner for work. He looked at her tired face, her worn-out shoes, and said, "You don't look like you can handle long hours." But instead of leaving, she stood straight and replied, "I don't need strength for long hours. I need strength for my child's future, and I have that." There was something in her tone that made him pause, that unshakable conviction only a mother can carry. He agreed to let her try. Days turned into weeks, and Aisha worked harder than anyone in the shop. She learned quickly, taking on extra orders, staying late even when her feet ached. She refused to complain, knowing every stitch she sewed was one step closer to the life she wanted for her baby. Slowly, the shop owner began to trust her, giving her more work and paying her fairly. One afternoon, as she was leaving, a woman from a local women's support group stopped her and asked if she would be interested in a small training program for home-based businesses. It was free, and they even provided materials. At first, Aisha hesitated. She barely had time to breathe, let alone attend a course. But then she remembered her promise. "I will not let you see me give up." She enrolled. The training taught her how to manage orders, handle customers, and even sell online. Within months, she was running a small tailoring business from her home. Her work became known in the neighborhood for its quality, and orders started coming in faster than she could complete them. She hired 2 other women, both struggling single mothers, and together they worked late into the night, sharing tea, laughter, and stories of survival. When her baby girl was finally born, the tiny hospital room was filled with more than just the cries of a newborn. It was filled with the quiet victory of a mother who refused to bow to life's cruelty. Aisha held her daughter close, tears falling on her cheeks, and whispered, "We made it, my love, and this is just the beginning." Years later, her business would grow into a well-known boutique, and people would speak about her resilience. But Aisha would always remember the nights she sat in the dark, pregnant and alone, and how those nights had taught her the most important lesson. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes when you are at your weakest, because in the end, she didn't just give birth to a child. She gave birth to a new version of herself, unbreakable, unstoppable, and full of hope. The contractions came earlier than expected, but instead of fear, she felt a deep calm settle over her. She had faced storms much worse than this. Emotional storms, financial storms, moments when she felt she couldn't take another step. And yet, here she was, strong, determined, ready to bring a new life into the world. At the hospital, the pain was intense, but her mind kept flashing back to every challenge she had overcome, the sleepless nights, the loneliness, the rejections. She reminded herself that pain was temporary, but the joy she was about to experience would be forever. Hours passed, sweat poured, and finally, a small, fragile cry filled the room. She looked into her baby's eyes and felt something indescribable, a fierce, unbreakable love that made every hardship worth it. At that moment, she realized this wasn't just the start of her child's life. It was the start of hers all over again. She held her baby close, whispering, "We made it. No matter what comes next, We will always rise. And deep down, she knew this was her greatest victory. Not because she had survived, but because she had thrived. Her eyes fluttered open to the soft morning light streaming through the thin curtains. The air felt cool, but her heart was warm with both love and fear. Aisha rested her hands on her belly, feeling the gentle kick of life inside her. 8 months pregnant, with a future both unknown and daunting, she lay there listening to the faint hum of the city outside. Every breath she took now felt heavier, not just because of her physical condition, but because of the weight of responsibility she carried. Her husband, Rahim, had left for work before sunrise, walking long miles because the bus fare was too much to afford daily. She knew how much he was sacrificing, working double shifts in a mechanic shop just to make ends meet. Their tiny rented room barely had space for the cot they had bought for the baby, but in her mind, that cot wasn't just wood and cloth. It was a symbol of hope. Yet, reality often tried to crush that hope. The constant nausea, the swelling feet, and the loneliness when Rahim was away were hard enough, but the cruel whispers from neighbors were worse. Why bring a child into this life when you have nothing? They said. Sometimes she even found herself believing them. Was she being selfish? Could they really give this child a good life? One afternoon, while folding laundry, Aisha felt a sharp pain in her back. She froze, afraid it was too soon. But then she took a deep breath and remembered her doctor's advice. Stress could harm the baby. She sat down, closed her eyes, and began to speak softly to her unborn child. You are not a mistake. From that day, her mindset changed. Instead of focusing on what she didn't have, she started focusing on what she could create. She began sewing small cloth toys from old fabric scraps, not just to save money, but to fill them with her love. She even started selling a few to the local shop, earning enough to help Rahim with groceries. The night labor pains finally started. The rain was pouring outside, and the streets were flooded. Rahim ran for help, his clothes drenched, his breath heavy. A neighbor with an old car drove them to the hospital. Hours later, through pain and tears, Aisha held her baby girl for the first time. The moment that tiny hand gripped her finger, she knew every struggle, every tear, every sleepless night was worth it. Years later, that little girl would grow up hearing her mother's story, not as one of struggle, but as one of strength. Because Aisha's journey wasn't just about bringing a life into this world. It was about proving that even when the world doubts you, love and determination can create a future brighter than you ever imagined.